This video was very hard to plan out. I want to talk about our favorite female main characters from fantasy series. Right now is time to place your bets. I'm gonna put the books that we're going to be talking about today on screen, and then think about the female main character and how awesome each of them is, and then we're going to try and rank them from like coolest, most powerful, best character down. And now here's the thing, even the characters in like the lower 5 spots are still such good characters. This is more of a personal preference thing for me, / sometimes a book just hits you at the right point in life too, because like looking through these, there are some books I love the characters because of like the age that I was, if that makes sense. And then like I've had this dilemma before with books, is that when I read it and I'll be like, wow, like teenage Katelyn would have eaten this up. That doesn't mean the book is like not good now, but it was like, I would have been fangirling so hard. And so I feel like that does play into this list a little bit, but feel free to place your bets in the comments. Or better yet, put your top favorite like female fantasy characters, maybe your top 5 of like the ones you love the most. I feel like if I'm doing my top favorite fantasy characters, I want to go from like the bottom of the list to the top. I feel like you can guess who the top is though. I feel like it's a little obvious, maybe, but let's go from the bottom to the top. So, in like 15th out of my 15 is Mare from Red Queen. Now, again, not a bad character. I loved Mare, and I really loved Red Queen. I've read the first 3, and I feel like that's part of it because I don't know her full story. I don't want to give too much away of Red Queen if you haven't read it, but Mare very much goes from being at the bottom of society to infiltrating the top. She's so, in my opinion, very resilient. She really goes through it, especially in the first book, if you know the twist that I'm talking about. But this is one of those cases where I wish I'd read Red Queen earlier. I feel like if I had read her as a teenager, she would have been along with like the Katniss and Triss like era of my life, and I just kind of missed out on it. I feel like Red Queen is a bit more dystopian than fantasy, but I wanted to include it in here because I think the magic system in those books is really cool. Next up is Dawson from Ledge. Dawson is fantasy Katniss. Like the way her demeanor and the way she handles things and like her thought processes just feel so familiar to Katniss. It's written by Stacey McEwen. It's so interesting. Like it takes place in an area that's very like icy, and we never see that. And Dawson is in like this little tiny town that's on a ledge of, let me try and draw it in the air for you. There's like a cliffside, and then there's this tiny town where there's like next to no resources, and Dawson lives there, and it's freezing all the time. It sounded horrible. And then every year, these like, I kind of picture them like the monkeys in The Wizard of Oz, but like snow version. They come over and they drop supplies, and in exchange, they take people, presumably to be eaten. Dawson ends up getting taken, sort of fights her way out of there. Like, she's so cool. Sometimes questionable decision making, but very cool. And so Fantasy Katniss is my number 14. Number 13 is Isla Crown from the Lightlark series. If you remember the TikTok drama over Lightlark, I feel like it got blown so far out of proportion. I really think it was just marketed to the wrong audience. I have a video about that if you would like to go watch it. But I really enjoyed Lightlark and Nightbane. There's some details that I couldn't grasp onto, and I think they're going to get explained in book 3. But I think that is why like it's not higher for me, because I feel like I really like Isla and I really like her powers, but I don't fully understand them yet. And so even though I like her as a person, I feel like a little lost there. So Isla is number 13. Number 12, I feel like might make some people upset. It's Bryce from Crescent City. And like, I mean, if you've seen any of my videos, you know that I love Sarah J. Maas and I love her books. And I love all of her characters. But Crescent City, of the 3 series that she has out right now, Crescent City is my least favorite, and I think it's because I really go for the Victorian era, the medieval stuff when it comes to fantasy. And so like Bryce being in modern day is one of the reasons that like kind of pushed her down the list a little bit, was just because like she's in a modern, that's not her fault, but yeah, I just like didn't connect with Bryce as much as like Phra and Selena. In the first couple chapters of both of those books, like I just really felt like I understood them, and I feel like I didn't understand Bryce the same way. However, I'm I'm not going to give any spoilers, but if you have read Crescent City 3, she really steps into her own. And I really liked that, but it came like a little later than I think I wanted it to. Because like by the time I like truly loved Bryce's character, we were like kind of already a little later into the story. So Bryce is number 12. Coming in at 11 is another one that might make people mad that it's not higher. Violet from Fourth Wing. I am one of those people that obsessed about Fourth Wing. Like I fit into that crowd on TikTok for sure. To me, she is fantasy Triss. I'll link it somewhere. I think that Fourth Wing and Divergent are parallel stories in different universes. In my opinion, like Triss is the character I've probably connected with the most. There are a lot of things about her that feel similar to like me. I wanted to feel that level with Violet. I didn't quite get there, but I absolutely love the way we're like framing her in the books as a warrior with a scholar's mind. She's so cool, but I also feel like we have yet to see her level of greatness. So she might hop up the rankings after the next book, but we're still waiting for Onyx Storm, so. Number 10 is Clary from The Mortal Instruments. She's another character that I feel like I really connected with like as a teenager, and so I feel like that does boost her a little bit in the rankings. But The Mortal Instruments is like such a wild ride, first of all. I've always said like every single Cassandra Clare book gets better, and I feel like we really see that in the Mortal Instruments series because City of Bones, I believe that was her first ever published. Watching her get to like her writing style in City of Heavenly Fire, I don't even know the word for it. Like, what do you call, it's not a prodigy. I don't know. Like true brilliance, in my opinion. I rank her as like one of the best writers I've ever read. And I think part of that is reflected in Clary's character. And I really like that. Like the way she like dove into her characters over time was really cool. And like seeing that in Clary, I loved it. Number 9 is Evie from Assistant to the Villain. I know that Evie is kind of divisive. I don't know how you actually say that word out loud. But people have very different opinions on her. Some people think she's like just too silly, too ditzy, and then there's people like me who like love her. I think she is so funny and sweet and just like she has such a kind soul, but as she's like working with the villain, she's like also ruthless. It's a very fun like balance for her. I haven't read Apprentice to the Villain yet. That's on my TBR. I really want to get to it, but I like truly enjoyed Evie as a character. I feel like so many fantasy novels we get these super serious female characters and it works a lot of the time, but I found it really refreshing when we were talking to Evie and she just has like such an optimism to her and like such a resilience. Like she comes across, yes, ditzy and bubbly and stuff, but she has like a lot of emotional scars, honestly. Like I felt so bad for her by the end of book 1, but I think like I just love that she's a hopeless romantic in a fantasy story when normally our fantasy girls are like, I don't have time for men. Number 9 is Lady Fire from Fire, which is part of the Graceling series. Trilogy? Not sure. I only read 3 of them. I've read Bitterblue, Graceling, and Fire. And Fire was just my absolute favorite. I think Fire might have been my first like true fantasy novel. I think her character is cool. She has a very big heart. She's like a shapeshifter. Like she's so cool. But the thing that I remember the most was like I wanted her hair so bad. She was the coolest. She had like this magenta, pink, copper, orange hair and I loved it so much. I kid you not. I dyed my hair pink trying to achieve this color. We were not successful, but I really like Fire and I feel like she's like a fighter, but not necessarily the way that we're used to in fantasy series. And I've been wanting to reread that book for a really long time and it's because of her character. So Lady Fire is number 9. Number 8, I don't know if this book is necessarily fantasy or dystopian. In my opinion, it falls somewhere in between. Juliet from Shatter Me. Our girl had some issues. Book 1. I like truly feel like that is one of the most unique books I've ever read. Like with the crossouts and the repetition and all this stuff, like Juliet was truly like losing it in book 1. But the way she describes things, obviously it's Terramorphy, but like the way Juliet describes things is just so beautiful and unique. And like the way that she sees the world is like very kind of artistic, but very emotionally deep. I think. The language she uses is like very image heavy, emotion heavy, and I really liked that. Like, Shatter Me is not something you go into when you necessarily want to light read. To me, it's very like all encompassing. You read it and you are in her mind. And I love that. My number 6 is Phra from the ACOTAR series. I really love Phra, and kind of for a lot of the same reasons that I like Juliet, is like the way that she views the world is very like art heavy, and I really like that about Phra. And one thing I really liked about her story was we're following her, and as she's going through this really hard time in her life, she kind of stops thinking that way, and we get these notes of her thinking like, it's dumb that I notice these things, who cares what color the grass is and stuff like that, because I'm dealing with all this intense stuff. And then her like fighting to get that sort of like experience back despite all the darkness she's been through. That is something that I truly admire in her character, and that is why she's at number 6. Number 5, I love her so much, Cordelia from The Last Hours. Now, I love every character from the Shadowhunters universe. I don't think Cassandra Clare has written a single bad character, but Cordelia really, I love her so much. Her story, if you haven't read The Last Hours, it's like the follow-up to the Infernal Devices. So they're both Victorian time, but it comes a little bit after the Infernal Devices. And watching her come into her own as a warrior, it was such a good time to see. And I think one thing that Cassandra Clare does really well with her characters is building these friendships between truly you feel the friendship. It just seems so real. There's a reason these characters feel real, and it's because of those relationships. And watching her navigate through these really complicated relationships, honestly, with such grace and poise. I just love Cordelia. I love her so much. This isn't really a spoiler, but there's this one scene where she's reciting a poem, and I think she has this gold dress on, and she is she's doing this sword thing that goes along with the poem. It was so cool. The fact that Cassandra Clare thinks she's done with that trilogy is hilarious. No ma'am. There is more. Please, there's more. Number 4 is Vin from the Mistborn series. Now, I am putting her here a little preemptively. I like Vin a lot. I'm not sure enough to be in the 4th spot yet, but it's because I just now finished the 2nd book and I have far more to go with her. The amount that I liked her in the 1st book to the 2nd just jumped so heavily, and so I expect that to continue. And Vin is a Mistborn. In the Mistborn series, the magic is very specific. People can use metals. You have to eat it, first of all. They eat metal and then they burn it, and they can use it to have super strength or to run super fast and push themselves it's imagine Spider-Man's webs. That is sort of the motion that they can do, and she can use it to see a little bit into the future. There's a lot of things that she can do as a Mistborn, but she in particular is very powerful. And even on top of her coming into her own as a powerful person, her growth in friendships, it's it almost parallels each other. As she gets more powerful, she further understands the meaning of friendship and love and stuff like that. And I feel both of those transformations are so powerful to see, because Vin is very unassuming. So watching her become this insane fighter is cool. Also, she started off in a very horrible and abusive place, and so watching her kind of de-thaw to people around her is also a beautiful transformation. And so I really like the way that those things are side by side, and I think I will continue to love Vin more as we go through the series. So I'm preemptively putting her in number 4. Number 3, we're getting up there. Hermione. I love Hermione's character. I think everybody does. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Hermione. I feel it's partly because the trio itself is so iconic, and Hermione is my favorite out of the 3. Something that I really love watching with characters like Hermione, the smart one, the one with the strong moral compass, the rigid person, is to see them start to make decisions for themselves that are outside of the rule book. And I think that Hermione does that a lot, especially as we enter into the 5th book-ish. She stops playing by necessarily the rules and more focuses on what she personally thinks is right. And that's something I always really like to see in characters, and having magic on top of that, just icing on the cake. Number 2 is Tessa from Infernal Devices. As I mentioned before, the Infernal Devices takes place in Victorian England times, which is first of all like my favorite time period to read. And then on top of that, like Tessa, she's a lot like Cordelia, weirdly. I feel like she's also another character that has a certain like softness to her, the way she talks to people and comforts people, and I just always like really like that about her character, and like the intense loyalty that she shows. I don't want to give too much away, but she becomes really freaking cool. If you know, you know, but I really don't want to spoil things, so. And then obviously my number one is Aelin Galathynius. How could you not? How could you not? First of all, the journey that she goes through in these books is insane. And second of all, the themes in Sarah's book, and particularly in the Throne of Glass series, are always so strong and so uplifting, and I love that. One thing that Aelin wants so badly is a better world, and something that I really like about these books is that the connections that she makes with people is because of that promise a lot of the time. And spoilers, like all the way through Kingdom of Ash, so please, if you have not read Kingdom of Ash, this isn't like an insane spoiler, but just like don't spoil it yourself. I'll put the book up until like the spoilers are done. When Aelin gathers like this band of women at the end of Kingdom of Ash, and they are going to defeat the big bad, and she just has all these girls at her side, and they are all there because they believe in her to deliver on that promise of giving them a better world. It was one of the most impactful moments in fiction that I've ever read, because all of these people are pulling through for her because they believe in her so much. And she has given up so much to get to the point that she was at the end of the book. And she was still like basically prepared to give more. Like Aelin is, I feel like, almost the quintessential fantasy female main character. She's an assassin, like she's brutal, ruthless, and she seems really self-centered until we understand like where her loyalties lie, and until she finds like her found family, and at that point like she will fight to the death for them. And I just, there's so, like, her character is just so good, and that's why she's my number one. There was no true purpose to this video. I just wanted to talk about these characters. I feel like I read a lot of fantasy books. These are kind of like, at present, my top 15 books, and that's kind of where I got the characters from. If I mentioned a character that you have not read, please know that I highly recommend the book. I would love to know what your top 5, 10, 15, 100 female characters are. They don't have to be from fantasy, but like I've kind of been on a fantasy kick recently, so that's where my brain is at. Please like this video if you liked it, click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Katelyn, thanks for watching. Bye.